Welcome back to the shop, everyone. I hope you're doing well. This video is going to be building out what you see in front of you, which is a very classically styled Fender Telecaster. And we are going to do everything from the body to making the fretboard to doing fret leveling. Everything that you see in front of you was built out in my shop. So without further ado, let's get started. So what this is a manual vacuum press. So what I did there is I put glue on my I put glue on my guitar blank, and then I added this, let's call it a black walnut veneer over top of it. It's a 1/4 inch thick, so not really a veneer, but it'll bring my total guitar blank up to 1 3/4 inches. And what you saw me do there is I sucked all the air out of this bag. It's got a tight seal on it there, sucked all the air out of the bag, and now we have clamping pressure. First time I've used it. I've had it for a while. I had plans on doing some veneering, but changed the project I was going to work on, so this has been sitting in my shop, and I thought this would be a good project to try and use it on to get a really uniform pressure across the whole top of this. So yeah, let's see how that does in a couple of hours. Moving right along, we're going to start working on the neck. So what you see in front of you here is an MDF template that I made based on the paper template that I downloaded and printed out from Fender. So that's my paper template. I'm going to keep that because I'm going to use my center markers eventually on this. This I then use to trace my outline, and I always use felt pen on outlines that are fairly important. This way, when I'm sanding and routing the edges, when we get down to finishing, I know exactly where my mark is. Pencil gets smudged and it can get erased, so fine tip felt pen is your best friend with these kind of projects. The other thing that we have to do is we have to do a slot before we cut the neck out. We have to do a slot for the truss rod. This is what you use to adjust the neck if it goes out of square, out of level, I guess, because you want to adjust to the tension from the strings, obviously. So yeah, we got to route out a slot into this for this rod to sit in, and then I'm going to have to figure out a way because I don't have the exact right tool to basically auger this out. So I think I'll probably use a Forstner bit to begin with. I'll have to make a little jig for that to get my holes true. And then I'll probably just use a chisel and just work this shape into the neck itself there so it's nice and snug. So yeah, we've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So the fretboard is all marked out. What I did is I made an MDF jig, and the bottom of my kerf on the jig is the same thickness as my saw. And then I've got a mark on the back of the blade to show me when to stop cutting. So we're going to cut out some of these frets. We're going to start obviously with the nut and then work our way down. So yeah, let's get started. I've already lined this up, so everything is good. Now I only have to do that 22 more times or 23 more times because I got to cut either side of the nut. So I'm not going to make you watch all that. I will start doing this step by step and we'll see what it looks like when I'm done. Time to start radiusing the fretboard. So what I did is I built a little jig that I can drop the fretboard into without, like so. And then I have my radiusing block that I put a center line on, as you can see. And then that double-sided sticky tape should hold everything in there. It's a little bit snug. Now we have a jig to hold the radiusing block in place. So yeah, I'm just going to do that for 72 hours and switch through my grits, obviously. But it looks like it's doing the trick. Everything seems to be fairly even. Yeah, that seems to be working pretty good. I'll run through the grits and radius that fretboard out. So radiusing that board wasn't too horribly bad. As you can see, some of my fret marks have been sanded off, but overall, I would say it took me about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour to radius this down to where it is there. I used various grits and sandpaper all the way up to 400. I might hand sand it with a couple of higher grits just to give it a little bit more of a sheen to it. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how that turned out. I can take this back to the miter slot and deepen those frets out a little bit, and it's also still a little bit too wide. So when I cut the neck, I can then cut the fretboard to fit the neck, so everything's nice and flush. So next we're going to mark out all of the fret markers from here, and then we'll do a final sanding and go from there. As I was putting this footage together, I realized I had way too much footage to put into one video, so I've broken this into 3 consecutive parts. I'll post all of these into one cohesive area on YouTube, obviously, and you can watch at your leisure.